Chapter 3. Joseph Sadler, Jr. I looked at the architecture of the building and I was very impressed. The inside was immaculate. I could tell these pieces of history were truly treasured. Nothing looked out of place. I wondered about the celebrities' lives and what they had to do to gain such a prestigious position in history. I even fantasized I was one of those immortalized beings adored by so many, placed up high on a pedestal for all to see. I ended my pipe dream, went, got something to eat, the bus came, and it was time to go. College in Canton, New York was a blink. I barely went to class, partied, no smoking or drinking except once, where I damn near died drinking Mad Dog 2020. My friends Narelle and Rodney sleep in peace. From Edenwall in the Bronx had to literally carry me back to the dorm from Potsdam College, where I was on stage performing my rhymes, and got so happy-go-lucky I overdrank when I'd never had a drink in my life. They took turns carrying me. I was still a little guy. My growth spurt hadn't happened yet. My roommate, a white guy named Lynn, cleaned my vomit off the floor and let me sleep it off. I loved performing my rhymes in front of other colleges or on their stage, and everybody loved me. I was happy, but it wouldn't last. It was like everybody back home forgot I even existed. Just like when I was in Oneonta Job Corps. I heard a song in college. The lady sang, "Mama may have and Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own." I was on my own. I had been for a long time. At the end of the semester, I couldn't get a bus ticket home. I asked what family I could, but nobody had it. I was the last student left on the entire campus. Finally, my mother sent the money through MoneyGram. It was time to get my own. When I got home, I immediately linked back up with SB and found a job working at Madison Square Garden through an agency called Archer Management Services, making $8 an hour as a foot messenger. I kept my clothes at my mother's house, but I stayed with Raynette and SB in Hunts Point. I ran into my neighbor Capone. He was a comedian who owned the barbershop downstairs and had started hosting at Showtime at the Apollo and was even doing some movies with Beanie Siegel of Rockefeller Records and Kevin Hart. He was blowing up and inspired me to pursue my shot at making it big. In Hunts Point, it was beautiful because my mother only lived 5 minutes away walking, right across the bridge, and I wouldn't have to go so far away to change my clothes. By now, I'd been rapping for 5 years. I'd never written about sex or smoking weed because I hadn't done either except for the one time I tried weed in Job Corps with Sean Smith. I hated it. My rhymes would be hot, but they were more about social issues. I learned about the art of hook making by listening to other artists. I also caught on to the 16-bar format. It came natural to me. My job at Madison Square Garden was a temporary assignment and my time had run out, but I still needed money. I was 18 with expensive habits. Being broke was not an option. I went back downtown to find another job. I was willing to work anywhere at this point. After my job hunt, I got back to the Point, aka Hunts Point, and bumped into my man Jim Bob from Homicide Hill, as it was called on Bryant Avenue. I knew JB from back in the days when he used to chill in the building next door from my mom's house, but he was from the Point. We talked a little, caught up, and he gave me my first taste of the drug game, flipping vials of crack. I posted up and started clocking. The money came slow because I was a pitcher doing hand-to-hand sales. The money was low, but the risk was high, too high. I made a little bit of paper, gave it to Raynette for some bills since I was basically at this point living under her roof, and quit drug dealing that day. I wanted another job, but being out of work for that short period made me lazy and impatient. I didn't like the low pay, and I despised being on the clock, having to wake up early, but I still needed money. I was in the back of the Point one day, and I saw my friend Jay. I'd met Jay, aka Jay the P, when I first moved to Hunts Point. We took a liking to each other and became close friends. I told him what was up. He put me on to his man on Lafayette, and we started getting money selling crack. I was making more money, but it still wasn't enough. I needed more, so we linked up with this dude right around the corner from my building on Seneca Ave, and the dude started supplying us. It was more money, but if we got caught, it was also more time. Because from crack, we moved on to selling heroin. We upgraded, and if we didn't want to, we didn't have to do hand-to-hand anymore. We were managers now, getting a 70-30 split. So we could give our workers $10 off each bundle, keep 20 for ourselves, and give 70 back to the supplier. I always did my own packs. I wanted the money, but selling heroin compared to crack gave me a different feeling. It made me feel like I lost my soul. The dope fiends looked way worse than crackheads. I couldn't help but feel guilty every time I made a sale. I rationalized by telling myself, it's not my fault. I'm not making them do it, and if they don't get it from me, they're going to get it from somebody else. Why turn down free money? I was giving Raynette money and helping with the bills. She didn't know what I was doing, but she wasn't stupid or slow. She tried to talk to me, but anytime I felt too many questions coming, I just blew her off. If she asked about the money, I just made something up. She didn't have proof of anything anyway. I was fresh all the time, no job, jewelry, money, and had OJs. That's cars with drivers, picking me up on the regular. Still, she had no facts, but like I said, she wasn't stupid. I felt like I was good. I had a nice little amount saved up to where I didn't need a job and felt like I should stop hustling, but in the drug game, it's hard to get out. You may have a lot, but you always want more because there's always more to get. Raynette told me my dad called, left me a number, and said for me to return his phone call. I hadn't heard from him in so long, but I was still excited whenever I got his attention. I called the number back immediately. After some small talk, my father got to the point. The Source magazine was going to be doing their first annual award show, and he asked if I wanted to go. My response was instant. Hell yeah! Anything to get a chance to hang out with my dad. He could have said anywhere, and my answer would have been the same. He said, good. They're going to be honoring me with an award, but I'm going to be out of the country, and I want you to accept it on my behalf. I said, out of the country? My balloon of excitement was slightly deflated. It was cool though, still sounded like it would be a fun night. He instructed me to go to my little brother's mother, Pam's house, and from there, Kev Dog, sleep in peace, and the driver would pick me up. He said I was to stay close to Kev the whole night. Kev Dog was a very close family friend who also doubled as my dad's security. I'd known him since I was a little kid. We got to the show, and everybody who Kev told I was Flash's son showed me love. All the faces I'd seen on TV doing that thing I'd come to love called hip-hop. They gave me pounds one after the other. Cool G Rap, Buckshot Shorty, Onyx, MOP, Group Home, Fat Joe, and many others. I was in the presence of greatness, and they treated me like I was one of them. The show went on after I accepted the award. I walked through the backstage area carrying the award, headed back to my seat with Pam, but on the way, I got stopped. He walked up to me like he was waiting to meet me. He looked at me and said, "Dang, he looked just like you, don't he? What's up, Lil Flash?" And gave me £1. Kev introduced me and said, "Jojo, this is Tupac." I already knew who he was. I told Tupac I'd seen him before and that was my cousin Kente's apartment in Harlem that they shot the movie Juice in. He said, "For real, man? Aw, small world." He asked me if I was into music too. I said, "I rap too." "Oh, for real? Here, man, take my number." And had his homeboy write it down on a piece of paper. I got back to my seat and told Pam I had Tupac's phone number. But when I reached in my pocket, it was gone. That quick, I'd lost it. I got outside when the show was over and people were coming up to me wanting to take pictures or shake my hand. Some people just wanted to talk to me. It felt good and I loved it, but it was now back to reality. I got back home to some bad news. Jay told me that our supplier had gotten arrested and we needed to chill for a while until things cooled down. We were stressed for a minute, but it wasn't too long before we were back up and running somewhere else. About a year passed of me hustling and I still hadn't had sex, but you couldn't tell by just looking at me. I'd kiss some girls, I'd rub some girls, but I just wasn't ready to take it to that next level. Honestly, I just didn't care about sex. I cared more about money and, of course, music. I told Jay I was ready to step it up and make my own CD. Even though I wanted to make my own CD, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I needed more information. I went to see my dad and told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to feel like he was in support of me, but the information seemed more discouraging than anything. He was down in the music industry and seemed bitter towards hip-hop. He was always rude to his fans. Me, on the outside looking in, I would tell him how he should appreciate people taking the time to show him love and wanting his autograph. As he packed his bag, headed out of town, he told me the Source was having another award show and if we wanted to, we could come. I said, okay, but I remember thinking and feeling like, forget going to see stars. It was time to show everybody I was one. Going to hip-hop shows had an extra benefit. For me, it was always a chance to be around my dad. This time, SB came. He was hyped about getting to meet B.I.G. We'd never met B.I.G., but we'd seen him a couple of times and went to one of his shows. When Ready to Die came out the year before, we both stood in line for hours on 8th Street in the Village waiting to get a copy of the album. The day of the awards show, we had to go to the VIP entrance in the back of the garden to get our laminates. We were behind a big crowd and standing right in front of me, I saw a dude wearing denim overalls. I didn't notice right away because his back was turned to me, leaning each of his elbows on each of the members of Mobb Deep's shoulders. He turned his head to see who was standing behind him, and it was Nas. We were all waiting to go inside and just kept it moving. One of the security guards stopped me and my brothers by forcefully grabbing my shoulder and pushing SB back. He told us the entries were for staff and artists only. I told him my father was Grandmaster Flash, but it did nothing to dissuade him. A guy whom I'd never met a day in my life pushed the security guard back and told him not to touch us again. The guy put the laminates on our necks and walked us through. I didn't know him, but the guy had this huge 3D ring on that said, "I God." Flashback. The next and last time I saw that guy was years later on 161st and Melrose Avenue, standing with KRS-One. While KRS was conversing with my dad, iGod remembered me, said not a word, and just nodded acknowledgement in my direction. End of flashback. We got inside and saw a lot of entertainers. As we went through, we were seated directly behind Faith, Puff, and Big. SB was hype. I told him to chill and wait for a good time to talk to B.I.G. He had a Source magazine with B.I.G. on the cover and wanted him to sign it, so he got out of his seat and said, "What's up, Big? Can you sign my mag?" Big looked up at SB, looked down at his feet, scrolled back up, then looked forward like he'd said nothing to him. SB stood there for a few seconds, then came back and sat in his seat. I looked at him, he paused a second, stood up, then yelled out, "Yo, Ray! Yo, Ghost! What's up with that shark nigga shit?" My eyes almost popped out of my head. Big, Faith, and Puff turned around in unison. The Wu-Tang, who were all seated to our right, started laughing, even the members who didn't rap. I was the one who deciphered to him when we heard "Only Built for Cuban Links" that they were talking about Big. Immediately, I hopped up and pulled SB out into the hallway to set him straight. Neither one of us were street dudes, but I'd seen situations spiral out of control over the littlest thing while I was out hustling. SB was a job-having college kid who was a fan of Big's. The things Big rapped about might have been just rap, but then again, maybe it wasn't. I told him he couldn't do shit like that, and I told him why. He understood. We went back to our seats, and they were all gone. We watched a few performances, and then the big guy with the red shirt went up on stage to accept an award. I'd never heard of Suge Knight, and this guy wasn't a rapper. He made his speech and caught my attention when he mentioned Tupac's name. When he shot the subliminal that seemed to be directed at Puff, I was really lost, but the crowd wasn't. I thought to myself, this guy is trying to commit suicide. When Snoop and Dre won an award, everybody started booing. Then I got it. The labels. Bad Boy vs. Death Row. When Death Row performed with the jail cells, COs, and a cardboard cutout of Tupac sitting in one of the cells, they fucking killed it. Death Row and the West Coast were coming for the hip-hop crown and had the talent to take it. When Big performed, I cheered extra loud. When he won an award, I clapped extra hard. It was on, and I was for the home team. When Puff congratulated Snoop and Dre publicly on stage for winning their award, it gave me perspective, and I started to see. It was the competitiveness of hip-hop and wanting to be the best that drove the men. Regardless of where we were from, we were all a part of this great thing. It was ours, and there could be many, but only one best. I was glad I got to see Puff do that. After the show, the streets belonged to the Wu-Tang Clan. RZA sat across the street on the sculpture at the post office with 20 big gold chains on. Method Man came out trying to make his way through the crowd, elbowing overly aggressive fans. The Wu was like 100 deep. After that, we hopped on the train and headed back to the Bronx. I started writing a lot more, and in between hustling, started coming up with a plan on how I was going to get in. I was 20 and had been engulfed in hip hop in front and behind the scenes most of my life. Then it happened. Tupac was shot. Days later, he was pronounced dead. Tupac, sleep in peace. I'd already felt his and Big's beef had gone too far. Radio and magazines were adding fuel, and finally, it had reached the point of no return and a person's life was lost. 6 months later, Big would suffer the same fate. I remember the day clearly. SB and I were asleep. It was early in the morning, and the sun was beginning to rise. Raynette frantically came into our room, waking us up from our red bunk bed set, yelling, "Jojo, SB, wake up! They killed Biggie!" Not fully awake, we both hopped out of our beds running, stumbling to the living room in silence to hear the news on the radio. We sat on the couch listening, not saying a word through the audio confirmation. It wasn't a dream. The rapper Ice-T was expressing his disgust, stating, "Whoever did that was some suckers." A West Coast artist. Snoop expressed his displeasure. Another West Coast artist. I was confused. Weren't we supposed to hate each other? My confusion broke instantly. We'd all lost someone. No matter where we were from, we were a family. The hip-hop family had lost another member, and the family was pissed. People close to me actually cried, talked about Big and how great he was. He was a representation of us, and he was gone. The loss of these two very significant people in this thing of ours was a dark period that changed mine and a lot of people's lives forever. There it was, unavoidable pain, even in the hip-hop game. B.I.G., sleep in peace. My 21st birthday was coming up, and I was hyped. SB's girl, Adise, came over with her best friend, Leonella, to see him. Her friend had the biggest titties I'd ever stood close to. We started talking, getting to know each other, and hit it off. She came over a few more times, and we started to get closer. This time, SB took Adise with him to the store. Once we were alone, we got to kissing, rubbing, and she told me to wait. She took that beige turtleneck sweater off and unleashed the Titans. They were perfect. She took her bra off and her nipples sat up on two huge mounds. I was ready. I sucked them, squeezed them, cupped her ass, licked her neck, undid her zipper, and there she was, naked. I, still not totally confident in myself, turned off the light, got undressed, and put the condom on just like I'd been practicing. I laid her down, felt her slit, and slid inside, saying goodbye to my virginity. I pumped about 3 times before I came. She pushed me off her and said, "Wait, wait." I took off the condom and turned on the light, expecting the worst. Expecting to get my feelings hurt. I was ready. Ready to experience some new kind of pain. When I turned on the light, she was curled up on the bed, holding her stomach, saying in a higher pitched tone than normal, "Damn, you did it too hard. Shit. Was that your dick?" I felt that shit in my stomach. Just wait a minute. She didn't even know I came. With that boost of confidence, when she was ready, I put another condom on and we got it back popping. Slowly. Right after our supplier got knocked, Jay got us in with his man from 163rd and Kelly Street, a block away from where the Big Pun, sleep in peace, mural would later rest, just outside of Hunts Point, and we'd been going strong ever since. After my 21st birthday, my father sat down with me because he'd found out somehow that I was hustling. He felt like I needed to do something else. His concern was a welcome change, but I resented him, and I was still living with a lot of pain. My father and I barely knew each other. Besides concerts and confrontations, we spent zero time together. I knew nothing about his personal life, his favorite food, what foods he didn't like, his first love, first time having sex, nothing. I was just glad whenever I got to be around him. His attention, negative or positive, made me feel relevant. He suggested the Army. I put up a little resistance, but eventually I gave in. I don't know why, but after all these years, he also wanted me to have his last name. Since birth, I was Joseph Dawson. I'd wanted his last name since I was a little kid and asked plenty of times. Once I found out the significance of having your father's last name, but he never budged, so I stopped asking. I agreed with his request. So for my 21st birthday, I became Joseph Sadler Jr., lost my virginity, and figured out how to get out of going to the Army. I'd spoke to somebody during casual conversation, and they told me their cousin was supposed to be going to the Army, but had gotten denied for having marijuana in his system. I kept quiet about my impending enlistment and thought to myself, bingo. I'd tried weed for the first time with Sean Smith when I was in Job Corps. I hated it. It wasn't my thing, but it kept me out of the Army. My father was pissed. A couple weeks later, Jay and I woke up early to hit the block. We had it mapped out. The night before, we'd gotten everything ready and had been checking the temperature of the block, just walking around chilling. The plan was set.